California traditions. And anyway, here we have a replica of an early California saddle, and kind of some of the features that distinguish this as an early California saddle is first of all the covering, and this is called the mochilla, and the mochilla would just slip off. It wasn't tied down by strings like later saddles were, and then it also had what we call the centerfire rigging, and that's that the cinch would come off the center of the saddle, and then one thing that was just particularly distinctive of the California saddles is a lot of them have this pie plate tapaderas, which are these round tapaderas, and they normally always rode with the tapadera, and then the stirrups were carved out of a solid block of wood. And then the later stirrups that we're still familiar with today were made out of steam bend woods, but during the mission and rancho period, they were carved out of a solid block of wood. And then then they would have the anquera, and they would go over the rump of the horse, the anca, so it was called a anquera, and anquera would have sheep skin under it, and whereas the leather underneath the bars of the saddle that later evolved into the skirts of the modern saddle didn't have any sheepskin on them. So it'd be just the anquera that have the sheepskin, and so the sheepskin on the anquera, and like the sheepskin on modern saddles, the main purpose was to keep the saddle blanket from sliding out from underneath the saddle, because it just provided friction to hold the saddle blanket in place. And so the anquera was on virtually all the saddles up until the mid 1800s, and then they kind of had a variety of purposes. The main one was to keep whatever you tied on behind your saddle, to keep that off the sweat of the horse, and then the other thing was if someone was going to climb on your horse with you, which they would frequently do, especially during fiesta times, they would, particularly the ladies would jump on the horse with the men, and the lady would always ride in front, and then the man would always ride behind, and so this kept his rump off the horse's rump, and kept him from getting all sweated up from horse's sweat. But then, sometime kind of like around the 1860s or so, they stopped putting the anqueras on saddles, so now it's kind of a forgotten thing. But anyway, this is the ancestor of the Western saddle as we know it today, and basically it's the heart of the saddle is the same, and with the wood tree, or fuste as you'd say in Spanish, and covered with rawhide, and then rawhide holds everything together, and so that would make for a very strong saddle that you could rope off of. So we're gonna start building a new saddle, and another early California style saddle, and so these are the pieces of wood that we'll be using. 4 pieces of wood, and the forks of the saddle, or the campana, we'll cut that out from the crotch of a tree, and then this will be the cantle, and which is from a curved part of a tree, or the cantle, or what you call a teja during the early California times, and then we have this piece of wood here that we'll be making the tablas, or the bars, out of. So most of the time, it seemed like during the mission rancho period, they would use cottonwood for making their trees, and because it was a little bit easier to carve and strong enough if you use pieces of wood where the grain was running right. Then most of the strength of your saddle anyways in your rawhide covering that you put over it. And the early California saddles didn't use any nails, and the cottonwood wouldn't hold a nail very well. So later on, as when people started putting nails in their saddles, well, then cottonwood didn't really work very well because it wouldn't hold a nail. And so a lot of saddles nowadays are made out of Douglas fir, because that'll grip a nail. So I guess that's for now. We'll start chopping into those.